everyone, so today we are going to do something a little bit different, and it's still animal related but not physically animal related. So we're going to do some leather, and obviously our favorite, ear bonnet or ear veil or whatever you'd like to call it. So we are not going to do the adjacent fur surrounding both the leather and everything. We're just going to focus on the actual physical materials that are not fur or skin or hair or anything like that. So yeah, just a different skill set. There's some very nice material details in the ear part of the bonnet itself, and then some very nice leather highlights, some metal from here and here, and then obviously some very nice stitching detail as well, and then the ribbon like thread rope thingy. Yeah, my words are not working this morning, can't seem to find them. Hopefully it will warm up as I go along. So yeah, that will be the focus tutorial. This is 15 centimeters by 20 centimeters Fabriano drawing paper. You can use whatever you have at your disposal in a drawing paper you prefer, but this is the size I will be working on today. Hopefully it won't take too long. I feel quite confident with leather. The bonnet, the knitted part is still a bit of still haven't quite figured out my preferred method for tackling it, but this should in itself be quite quick, because I've learned not to focus too much on the actual thing you see, but to more focus on the feel and the actual like texture. So this is a really nice tutorial for textures. There's a whole bunch of different textures in this actual little drawing, from smooth, very rough textures, fine textures, little itty details, and these will also come to play in larger tutorials. Obviously in the largest tutorials it won't be as focused but it will give you a general idea of how to actually tackle this specific part. I think it's very important to be able to draw different textures and materials. That's why I'm not only going to focus on fur in itself, and hairs and manes and muzzles and eyes, and we're going to do some other fun stuff, look at different parts of the bodies that all have little intricate little textures that it definitely builds up your repertoire and helps you figure things out that aren't quite that you're not quite used to, that's new, or something that you haven't drawn before, so you have something to fall back on, because I have done these types of textures and it's similar to this and this and this, so it is quite useful. So as per usual, I will be using Cretacolor graphite pencils, and also, where's one? I know there's one or two of them still around. Koh-I-Noor graphite pencils, and then I've got one random Rembrandt Lira graphite pencil. It's the only one I have in 2B. And then also we will be using, as usual, graphite powder. I just have the Cretacolor one, and with that I usually either use a blending stump, various sizes. Mine is all dirty. I don't have any clean ones. I like the dirty ones. Any type of brush. This is a makeup brush. It's got nice and soft bristles, so it's quite good for blending. And then obviously my Tombow Mane eraser, and also a Putty Eraser. You can also use just a normal eraser. If you don't have a Mane eraser, this is quite useful because you can, it's malleable, you can move it into any type of shape or point. And if you don't have a Mane eraser, I'll also suggest taking a normal eraser and cutting it into pieces with a little fine edge, and that also works quite well. I've done that before having this little guy. So yeah, I will post both the reference and the line drawing. That will be up before the actual tutorial is posted, so you will have all of that to your disposal, and also again a description of all the material used. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with the thing I am most confident with. Let's actually just start with the ear veil, with the little ear part, because it's actually got nice quite folds and material textures. So I'm going to start, yeah, I'm going to put on a layer of graphite powder first. Okay, so I've actually worked 3 minutes on this little part right here, and I was not happy at all. So I stopped the camera, raised it, and now we're going to start again. So you won't be seeing that 3 minutes of me having a hard time, not being happy with the result. So now we are going to try something different, a different approach. Hopefully that helps. But that's the reality of drawing. Sometimes you start out and you're just like, nope, this is not working, don't like where this is going, I'm not happy, let us erase it, forget it ever happened, and start again. And hopefully you can find a better approach, because that's what we're going to do now. We're going to start with a better approach. So I'm actually going to go in with a 3B pencil. I was a bit too focused on the details too early, and I kind of lost the plot completely. So I think part of my mistake is I did not work on this side equally, so I kind of did not quite see my values. So I'm quickly just gonna use an HB pencil to quickly just reinforce where I was going with this. I started with the seam line, which is fine. I quite like that idea of starting with the seam line. I think I should have gone in darker sooner. That sounds a bit strange, but yeah, sometimes with material you need to be more deliberate. Not like fur. I think I approached it a bit wrong. Sometimes I get it right, sometimes, you know, most of the time I don't do that. I really just go like, no, no, I'm not even gonna try and work through this. This is not working, this is going nowhere. Because most of the time when I start feeling that way, I just push through, and then, you know, I'll see lights at the end of the tunnel, and it ends up working out. This particular case, I was like, no, this is going nowhere. I don't want to waste my time. I am just gonna pause, erase, and then start over. So that is what I'm doing. This is my current situation. But that's completely normal. It happens all the time. You start something, well, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does occasionally pop up. So to me, it's nothing new. It's not strange. I don't feel bad about it. You know, you just you move along. You've learned from your mistakes. It's the quickest way, really. And then you just kind of feel better about your second attempt. You feel like, oh, I totally get this now. Oh, this is much better. So I'm just going to take a 3B pencil. Just going to enforce the seam line. So hopefully you'll see my better second attempt, and we won't have the same struggles that I just had. So yeah. So let us see if we can get this one down. So I'm going straight in with my B pencil, 3B pencil that is. Circular motions. I think I was too focused on the details too quickly. And it kind of threw me off, to be honest. which is not what you want. So pretty this summer. I quite actually like drawing material. It's not something strange to me, especially if you draw horses and there's a rider with a jacket on or something. Not too strange. Quite like it. Can really have some fun with it. So what I'm going to do now is, now that I've laid down those B pen pencils, I'm going to actually take graphite powder on a blending stump instead of the brush. Still can't find my words. And we're going to kind of blend this in. So I'm going to take the very dirty one. I'm just going to put some on the tip. Tap off as much of the excess because graphite powder is quite potent, and we're going to blend in the B versions first, where we put pencil down first. I'll probably load up my stump a few more times if it gets a bit less potent. Okay. Don't need to load up too much. And now I'm going to take the other side and I'm just going to blend in. Yeah, much better. Typically with these, sometimes I have said, maybe in a previous tutorial, that I generally start with the H pencils first, but on some occasions, depending on what I'm drawing, I will go in with the B range actually first, because it just the end result sometimes tends to be a bit better. This already is miles better than what I started out with first. It was an unblended mess. And with materials, you need to blend between your folds. It needs to be seamless. It can't be a harsh highlight because it's contours that flows, and you need to be able to show the contours that flow with nice blend from one shadow into a highlight, into another shadow or whatever. Sometimes they are very bright highlights, but that completely depends on the material and the fold that it has. So now I'm just going to take the dirty side. I'm not going to put anything on it, and I'm going to work on the side. Like I said, that was probably my mistake also in the beginning, is not about working with both sides at the same time. I think that threw me off also a little bit. So yeah, but this is already a lot quicker, a lot easier way to do it than what I went for before, and I'm gonna kind of translate this method onto the bonnet part, which I normally do. I normally do the graphite pencil with the blending stump and the B pencil. Sometimes you choose to do things out of your normal. We're just gonna go into the seam as well. There's some areas that are in the shadows, so we're just going to do that. Okay, already miles better. You can see the folds. It's basic, it's easy. I'm going to take a putty eraser. Okay, swipe it on. I'm just gonna put in some of the highlights. Obviously I'm going to blend it in again. There we go. This side as well. This side is more in the sun, this part right here. So it's lighter in tone, lighter in value than the front portion of the ear. better. And I'm just going to take the cleaner side of the blending stump we used the first time and just very lightly, almost no pressure, let the stump do the work for me. Go over those areas. There we go. Now I'm going to take 3B again. This time I'm going to be more precise. And already the B pencil is laying a bit darker down. I'm going to kind of keep it away from the edge because I'm going to use a lighter pencil for the edge. Just gonna go over this highlight here because it's kind of in the shadows. It's a very subtle fold. Just using my blending stump to go over where I went. So just using the 3B pencil for the little material texture. And I'm starting the pencil in the darker area because it's just easier and you can hide where you put the pencil down, which is normally ends up being a bit of a darker spot. So I also made a bit of mistakes with the way I was approaching the textures. I think I went about it not, I was very incisive about it. I wasn't very going to do it now, you know. Put in the stitching very subtly. I'm not going to harp too much on it. Gonna go in, darken up this side of the stitching, use my HB pencil and just also add in this area here, define the edge. I'm sometimes very deliberate from the start with what I'm doing. It just gets sometimes the job done easier, or it's something that you can just be very deliberate with and not have to faff around. I like to faff around with the fur and those types of things because that's just who I am. That's just my preferred method. But for some things, this is a H pencil, by the way, that I just quickly picked up. So I'm going in medium pressure with the H pencil, very deliberate. Sometimes you just have to go in there and just get it done. No, not faff around, which I can do. I like faffing. I'm actually gonna take a HB pencil for this part right here. There, there's the highlights. 3B pencil again. Darken that area up. And I might not faff around too much with the materials texture just now. Size of the drawing really doesn't lend it to be that helpful. So I might just hint to it here and there. HB pencil. Blending stump, we're just going to blend there and then into this little highlights that are left open. Yes, we will. 8B pencil. You know, I like my 8B pencils. Can just focus this on areas with maybe the deepest shadows of the folds to really show, you know, the depths and the contours. And as you can see, it does its job without actually detracting too much. Going in down here. And when I use a pencil, I use circular motions. It is also kind of a blendy motion. It's not very harsh. Going into the seam line. I'm going to take a 5H and I'm going to go around the edge to find the edge without actually putting in like a line. Like a harsh line. That it is kind of not just some blended mess. I'm also going to go into subtly hint to the lines here. Too much. Take the dirty part of whatever blending stump you've used with the graphite pencil on. Just blend. I'm going to actually take some graphite powder. Just blend out. If you've got any harsh areas, you can just blend it out with graphite powder. It will seamlessly connect whatever there's a bit of a harsh line with. Just going to go on this side as well. And already you can see basic contours and shapes. Just going to fill it in. Take my 5H and we're going to do exactly on the other side what I did on the front. I'm going to add a border without actually adding a very harsh line, just containing what we've added. And obviously we haven't even added like our highlightiest highlights. And if you can see that when I put pressure on the 5H, it blends in the B pencils very nicely and actually deepens up. It gives it more punch and oomph. Just gonna blend that in. Also just use this to maybe add some texture lines. There we go. Yeah, this approach is working much better than the one I used before. It's much more effective, especially for the size of the drawing. Doesn't detract from it, because in my first attempt it detracted very badly from the actual thing I was drawing. I did not like it at all, not in the slightest. So just check the general direction of your lines and just add little lines that go in that direction. There we go. I'm going to take my mono eraser. I'm going to clean it up. There we go. And just subtly add some highlights. And that 5H pencil is actually the way we've used it would make subtle indents in the paper. I don't deliberately like making indents in the paper. I like it to just happen. Usually I can use a pencil to just make those lines for me. If I need it, just take your 3B and just texture out. There we go. Take a blending stump, just blend that in. The highlight created will still stay there, it will just blend in. I'm going to clean up my mono eraser. Just add these subtle little areas. blending stump. This is a 3B pencil. Just going to add some more definition on the side. Not going to blend in that too much because it adds its own texture. You can always, I like using the pencil's natural texture sometimes. Just over the top. Gives a really nice effect in the end. I'm going to take my edge pencil. If you want to blend in the pencil without actually be using a blending stump, you can just use an edge pencil, another pencil to do it for you. Gonna take a brush, no graphite pencil on it. Graphite powder. Just subtly blend that in. Take a blending stump, dirty side. Just contour this out. This side is obviously in blurred, out of focus. Putty Eraser. Just work on that highlight. Gonna take an H pencil. And this is, I'm also going to be very deliberate. It's blurred out, it's not, doesn't have any major details. It's got a sort of ridge here. Blending stump, whichever one you want, not the dirty one. Full edge, and we're just going to define that edge even more between the two. 3B pencil. blend that out. It's not working. I'm gonna try it. There we go. This is going quite quick because I'm being very deliberate with what I'm doing. Being very like, put it down. You should be able to just get in, get out, get the job done. With certain things, you don't need to really take your time. Putty Eraser. I think it's a good skill to have. To get in, get out, put in your values, put in the important stuff. And get it done. Because certain things don't need faffing about. Let's just put it that way. Definitely don't need that much faffing about. I'm gonna take my Putty Eraser. Just put in this highlighted edge. Very subtly. There we go. And here as well. Bring it around to the stitch. That's it. And put in there that highlight. And there in the middle. Here's one as well. Blending stump. For edge. Take your 3B again. Okay. Blending stump. And we are going to move along. Okay. We will, in the end, you know how I like to do it. Get basic things done and then move on. So we're going to move on to the leather. So with leather, I'm normally also very deliberate. So we are going to first just clean up. Okay, go take a HB pencil. And we are just gonna clean up our lines. Start subtly adding maybe contours and things like that. Okay. So with the stitching, I'll probably use either a jelly roll or something similar. to get the white stitching. So I slightly already contoured it out. Continue on with that. Put in this little. There we go. Now there's this little edge in this thing. I'm gonna not add it. You can add it if you want to. I'm not gonna do that. So I'm going to completely ignore the stitching and just get the base of the leather down. My words are escaping me today. Can't seem to find them. So I'm normally very deliberate with leather. Tend to be quick with it, to not faff around with it too much, because it's quite, it's deliberate material. You've got your stark highlight, stark shadow, lines, subtlety. The only subtlety that comes in is with the leathers, with the stress, like wrinkles and all that from use. So I'm still just finishing my lines, and with that adding shading and a bit of contours as I go along. And also just to see if I missed anything with the initial draw of the lines, because there's sometimes I do miss things. I just don't see it. Sometimes lines are a bit wonky as well. That happens. Especially when you sketch things or... There you go. Okay. So I'm going to go in with my 3B pencil, get it nice and sharp. I'm going to go in soft first. Just build up on on the initial little shadows we put in. So I do sometimes get a bit, my eyes kind of mix up, especially with the ridges and the stitchings and everything kind of all muddles together sometimes. I sometimes do miss subtleties, or maybe put something on the wrong side of the leather. That also happens to me. Going to take an H pencil. So as with the material, the leather actually has very nice movement of contours from light to dark. They do have obviously their stark highlights, but very nice flow of shadows. Take your blending stump. I'm just using the dirty one. You should probably also go now have a dirty one. There we go. Mono eraser. Okay, so let's continue. This is my HB pencil. And we're just going to start detailing this out. Just going to take a mono eraser and clean it up a little bit, just so that I can clean edges that I don't want pencil in. Go. I'm going to take my 3B. gonna take my H pencil and just start kind of working down here at the bottom. I'm leaving these highlighted strips alone for now. Just focusing on the actual like piece of leather that's normal color. Words, can't find my words today. Here we go. So I'm just going to continue on with the H pencil. Kind of leave this portion here in the middle for now. It's the most highlighted part. Actually gonna erase this here, it's too dark for my liking. Has to be more subtle. Here we go. So there's a very definite highlight here and also below this stitching line. So I'm gonna add that with the mono eraser later. Blend, blend, blend. Mono eraser. Oh, just need to clean it. Just keep the edge pencil close. mono eraser again. There we go. And then there's also this highlight at the top there. Take a bit of a blending stump, lightly go over it. There we go. Still with the edge pencil. Now we move on to the other side. Just blend out this little bit. I'm actually going to add a bit of graphite powder there with my blending stump. Tap off as much excess as you can. There we go. Take your mono eraser or whatever you are using for a little more detailed erasing. We are going to put in those little stress bendy lines. Just ever so slightly. Clean up here and just also lighten this up. Take your H pencil. Okay. Now we're going to take a 3B pencil. I'm just going to add a bit of darkness, a bit of little lines to emphasize the little cracks and weathered bits of the leather. Then we're going to start subtly adding little spaces for stitching. It makes these closest to this part right here, has these little waves, so we're just going to put in subtle little waves, not too much. And then we're going to just continue on that line down. Then I'm going to take my HB pencil. No, I'm going to stay with my 3B pencil. Wheesh. Maybe I should get myself a glass of wine, then it will work a bit better. Okay. So also at the top of this, also just gonna add, let me just get my bearings, these little wavy forms. I'm going to just take my mono eraser and clean up here a bit. Like I said, I sometimes get a bit confused with all the lines. Oh, not HB, 3B pencil. Here. Continuing on with your 3B, I'm just gonna go blend it out. Take your H pencil. And we're just gonna help blend out this area. Blend, blend, blend. Yeah, I'm gonna now take an 8B, sharpen it up, get a nice point. So to get the actual shine of the leather, you need a really deep, dark shadow and a very light highlight. That really brings across the point of the shine and the actual look and feel of the material. I do sometimes darken it up more, add a more light highlight. I do that. Really brings home the point across of what it is. Blending stamp. Add in the highlights just now. It's a lot easier to take it out for me. The only problem is with these B pencils, it does quite dirty up your erasers quickly. So you do need to clean it more often. That's fine. It's part of the job. H pencil. No, go back with my 8B. H pencil. So this is all just about building up your layers. Obviously the size gives it a challenge as well. It's not as simple or as easy with the size to get everything precise. That's why it's really nice to do these, because you learn how to put in the detail without it actually being there. So I'm still just using my edge pencil to just work on these details. I'm not too worried about the stitching just now. I'm gonna use a jelly roll to kind of put it in, and then I'm gonna blend over it with the pencil. So yeah, just blend in, blend. Gonna put in some final like highlights once the piece is all complete, and I've got a basic idea if something needs to be darker or lighter. This is just my edge pencil. Let's go with the 3B again. I'm gonna start with our darkest little spots. Very soft pressure here in this shadow area. It's not really dark. Now with the metal as well, you've got your very bright highlights and your very deep shadows. It really gives off that shine. So really don't be afraid if you see the darkness and you see the highlights. Don't be afraid to just put it in. Go for it. It's there. If it's there, it's there. You need to put it in. That's what really going to give that realistic feel to the drawing. Give it life, make it look more dynamic and not as flat. No one wants a flat drawing. Just softly with the 3B pencil, gonna shade in the shattered part of the metal. Still only putting in light pressure. I don't want to really go in with it. It's basically the same I just did with the H pencil in the beginning, just mapping out everything, and then in the end we will blend it in and really give that highlights. Already you can see just basic shape and the form taking being created, and it's there. Now I'm going to take my H pencil and we're just going to kind of put in like an outline, not really outline, but define the actual thing. Put in some sharpness, that's what I'm looking for, and not just a blurred out detail. So all these little wrinkles will help also, will be helped along with some erasing and a dark pencil around them. So I'm not too worried about them just yet. Can still put in some darker highlights to really, like for instance with here, it's a really dark line, really dark shadow there, comes down and really dark there, and already it changes the dynamic. Really defines the metal bit even more when you just add those subtle differences in shadow and highlights. You know it must be shiny, but to get the shine you really have to look at what's really going around the shine, what makes it shiny. You know, it's not just one, oof, there's your highlight, there's your shine, go for it. It's not how it works. This is my 3B pencil, and this is my 8B pencil. Just really working on that shadows. Back to my edge. And as you can see, so far this is just 3 pencils that I've been using, and I'm already kind of getting the feel and the look that I want. And I haven't even gone in with a Putty Eraser 8B pencil again. Just down here at the bottom, just put in the little nick at the top. There we go. Obviously this would also be very essential to differentiate these parts from the actual fur and the surroundings. So it's also very, very good to know. I'm just going to take my 3B. There we go. So I'm just going to quickly cover this in H. I'm going to going straight with my 8B pencil and just do this bottom line and this bottom outside edge. There we go. 3B pencil. Back to H. Obviously this will be even more detailed out once we go in with our razor to put in the highlights. 3B pencil. Eight B. Go just for that bottom highlights, bottom shadow. Still my H pencil. Three B. Now we're switching to the other side. There's more subtle little details in this top part of this piece of leather. So we'll focus on that just now. I'm going to take my edge and just clean this out. Find the edge. Eight B. Go 3B pencil. Back with my edge. Three B pencil for these little highlights. Oh, highlights, shadows. And as you can see, this leather actually, if you use the right pencils and the right methods, it actually goes really quickly. Even just the base layers, you can obviously faff around with these things as much as you like, but the basic structure and shape and the highlights and the shadows actually goes by really quickly if you use the right method, right strategy, right pencils. Go in quickly with your shadows. I'm not afraid to use your really deep pencils with these things, which you really need to, otherwise you just won't get the desired effect. So yeah, it goes by quite quickly. I'm just using the blending stump here, 3B pencil. Okay, now we're going to play with our little Putty Eraser. And we are going to put in some highlights. Yay, fun. Super duper. You can even use the jelly roll for this, which I have used jelly roll for really bright metal highlights. Just keeping the edge pencil around, keeps it defined edges. Just, oh, that's not the right pencil. Just keeping with the edge pencil, we will go in with the other darker pencils afterwards. There's these subtle little folds And some of these leather straps. Just your H pencil to define the edges. I'm going to take my 3B and sharpen it up. Really go into we'll definitely be going in with the 8B as well, just for those really dark ones. Go. So just going to use that to blend around. Three B pencil again. You can also use your B pencil just to subtly add a line around the highlight, which I do sometimes do, just further defines it without making it. You obviously have to be very subtle about it, as it doesn't detract from your overall look. Three B pencil, continue on with that. Take mono eraser again. We are just gonna further highlight this between. Highlight here. I might just go in with jelly roll in the end, but I'm gonna take my 8B and last old sharpen. This is my edge pencil. And we're just gonna obviously I also already went with a little bit in with this mono eraser, just some little details. .3B pencil. H pencil again. I know I'm jumping around quite a bit, but it's just easier to, when something catches my eye, to just quickly go to it. My mono eraser. There we go. Moving along. So long. Actually, first, let me just quickly see if I can find my jelly roll. Here we go. As you will remember, I used it in the Frenchy tutorial as well. And it is quite a useful little tool. I just use the little stamping motions for it. And it just kind of adds something. And then you can just tap it out. I usually just tap it out or go over with a blending stump. Yeah. That should do it, just for now. Now I'm going to move on to this little piece, and then we're going to go here and over there, and then this tough part starts. So I'm just going to take my H pencil, blending stump, and just blend that out. I'm going to take my HB pencil, and we're just going to start building up the shape of this leather. And also show where the contours and the little shadowy areas and the bumps and everything is. 3B pencil. I'm obviously making this darker than it is in the reference because that's just who I am. And it's just a lot easier to see the differences between this light and this light, and this dark and that dark. So it just makes everything a little bit easier, and it's just something I naturally do. I naturally make things darker than it is. Some people I know tend to go lighter. It's just basic preference of where you like things or where you see and perceive what you're going to draw. That's completely normal. Take my 4H pencil. And we just continue. This is quite a basic piece of leather. You just get your shape in, the little bumps and the ridges. Obviously I haven't put in my very bright highlights. There's a little bit of stitching over here, but I can put that in with a darker pencil. Blending stump, preferably not the dirty side. I'm going to take my Putty Eraser. Add in the highlights. Just going to take my H pencil again, just from here, the padding. There we go. Putty Eraser for this bright little highlight. Extends over to there. Blend, blend, blend. A little bit of highlights here, obviously with the razor being laden up with pencil, it won't erase that much. And then also just at the top here, there we go. 3B pencil, gonna add these little stitching marks. There we go. Obviously just very subtle, not really going for it. There we go. Take my H pencil, .3B pencil just for here, defining the little edges. There we go. Okay. Now comes the hard part. The head scratching part. So I'm going to start in the front, move my way back. There's not as much of the knitting here as they say. You know the drill. There is a little patch of what seems to be a logo or something. I'm going to completely ignore it. Not interested in drawing it. So let me just clean up around here. Das ist ignore annoyingly. There we go. Edge pencil. Keep your blending stump at hand. We're gonna do the same as the leather, kind of map it out. Yeah. Okay. So there are 3 different colored rope border thing around the knitted area. And it's got, yeah, details. Not very nice. Just cleaning this out. Okay. So I'm just going to put in these sweeping motions. Rope detail. Comes to a point where it makes almost this like S shape. Depending on this where you're viewing it. You're going to start just mapping it out. And then I'm going to take HB. I'm just gonna, and I don't go I've obviously sketched out it in a straight line, but now that I'm kind of like rounding out the shape so that it looks more organic and more true to form. And you will see I'm going to use graphite powder to fill it in, and then just use the pencil to further kind of deepen and lay out the shadows. I'm not going to use the actual pencil, it's just time consuming, and obviously there's a better way of doing it. Yeah, so I'm just going to take the graphite powder. Okay, I can still see all the lines I made. This is obviously the black rope I'm working on now, so it's quite a bit darker. Take the 3B, and we're just going to continue on doing exactly the same thing. Obviously there's going to be highlights in between, and obviously this middle part that hits the sun directly is the most highlighted, and then away from that point becomes more shadowed. So we'll work with that concept. Obviously this is still just basic form. Basic shapes. I'm going to take my H pencil and kind of just, so the shadow lies on the underside of the turn of the rope, so I'm just going in with my H pencil and kind of just going on the underside. So on every downstroke I'm adding a little obviously I need a darker pencil for this, but this is just to lay out the basics. I'm going in 3B pencil. I'm going to do the same, and also do the underneath bits as well, the bottom one. And then I'm going to go over with graphite powder just to blend it a bit, and then do a bit of highlights. And then see where the other shadows lies. It's only at the top here, and then it kind of fades. So it's just a repeating pattern that you've got to just figure out first, get a game plan, maybe, obviously your first try is obviously your trial run. If you get it right on your first try, that's just great. That is just great. So I'm just gonna do the top. It's more like a line at the top, so I'm just gonna obviously just put that in. It fades way around here. Just put in this bottom line. And then this top also. Just gonna kind of blend in the top parts of those ribs. There we go. And as you can see, we've already got a basic shape of it. Take a blending stump. There we go. Now I am going in back with my 3B, and we're just gonna play around with it more. So as you can see, it's more like a braid at the top here, so I'm just adding a little like arrow with some of the things, then we're just gonna since it's not that big, the details of it isn't not necessarily that important. It's the illusion that you're kind of putting it there, that's what sells it. I'm gonna go in with 8B, just give it a nice point. Still obviously need to put in a highlight or two. Just thinking now. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a jelly roll for those highlights. Then I'm just going to blend it in. It's just going to be easier. Then I just take my finger to tap it out. And that will just give the illusion. Let me see if I can give you. There we go. Just a bit out of the light so that you can see. There we go. Now I'm going to take an edge pencil. It's just important if you put on the jelly roll to just kind of incorporate it back into your drawing. So that it doesn't just stand out and look weird. There you go. And then I'm just going to take sweep, sweep, sweep. Now we move along to the other ropes. Okay, so we are going to go on to the remainder of the ropes. So the adjacent one to the black one is white, and then it's like this goldy silver one. So the white is going to be, so we're going to follow the same approach. This is a 2H pencil, just darkening that up. So in here we're just actually quite darken this up quite a bit. I'm just gonna take my mono eraser, just clean up that section underneath here to open it up a bit more. There we go. So we're going to follow the same principle. Kind of in these divots is the other line. So we're just going to follow that quickly, and I'm just going to sketch out this. And this we are going to use the mono eraser to highlight with, because it's not that dark of a rope. So keeping with my 2H, we're just going to kind of the same as we did with the black rope, just shade in the folds and also shade in the top underneath the brow band as well. We will go in with a bit of a darker color just for some more definition. And then once everything is also filled in, we'll just go over with final details. So I'm also, with like the black one, making these like U shapes, slanted U shapes, just for more definition. And then we're going to also define out the top of the black rope detail, just to define out these edges even more. And once everything is filled in, it'll be a lot easier to see if something needs to go lighter or darker. I'm just shading the bottom. If you see the reference, it's kind of the bottom that's got the shaded details. Since this is not a very large piece, you don't need to be that precise with what you are doing. You just need to allude to the fact that that is what's going on there. That is the detail that's going on there. I mean, obviously, if I'm not, I admire people that can draw in the very miniature. I am not one of, I do love a quick small drawing, but then I usually loosen up my style a bit. I try to let go of my more precise nature that I get when I'm drawing a lot bigger. So, but there are people that can do this is an HB pencil, that can do the details in the very small, and I really admire them and their patience, because it does take quite a bit of patience to do that. Not everyone, that's why probably most realism artists, they work on a very large scale, because they can really hone into the detail and really actually focus on it, actually put it in, without having just to allude to the fact that it's there. So I'm just doing the same that I did with the 2H, just going around the folded braided edges, and also just defining out the edges of the bottom rope along with it. And I'm just going in over the top with my HB pencil. And just rounding out the edge of the rope. Now, obviously this top one is darker, but there's a lot less of it because it kind of folds back into everything. It's got very strong shadows in the folds themselves. So I'm going in with my 2H again. Just gonna sketch it out like we did with both previously. And I'm actually putting in the line already deeper. And this one actually has a lot less of it visible, and it fades here at the bottom. So I'm going to take my HB pencil again. I'm just going to shade it in as well. Then I'm going to take blending stump, or yeah, I would take my blending stump. Small itty bitty one, very dirty, so I'm not going to put in anything else with it. There we go. Take my 2H pencil, blend it in further. And also, this is going to get a bit darker, so that is fine. like all the others, you just shade the bottom, and then as soon as you get to the top, you shade a bit of the top as well. Then I'm just going to continue on with my 2H. Now I'm going to take something a bit deeper. Let's go in with I saw a B pencil around here somewhere. I did. No, let's just, oh yeah, here it is. Itty bitty small. So I'm going to take my B pencil, sharpen it up. And we're just going to start this here little thing. Blending stump, just blend this out. Then I'm going to take my mono eraser, clean it up a bit. There you go. Just gonna just define this edge a teensy beensy bit inside the rope. Now that is, there we go. Take a B pencil and then just at the top define the edge, and as well as little fold details. There we go. Then we're going to take a mono eraser, or whichever eraser you are using. We're just going to put in a bit of fold action, folding details in here, as well as here where that little seam is. I'm going to take my 2B. I'm just going to continue on. I'm just shading in further in the brow band just for more definition. And then also I'm going to kind of fill this in as well with the 2B and start mapping out little folds. So I'm looking specifically only at the dark parts, and then they'll kind of come together if you just focus your eye on the dark parts, the folds, those types of things. and make the shapes look a bit odd. Don't go for what you perceive it should look like. Like your mind always wants to make, maybe if you see an ellipse, a circle, or you know the trick. There we go. And we'll just continue on. Quickly just shading in this. I will be adding a bit darker something. Let's add. Yeah, let's go for the 4B. There we go. 4B. I'm just gonna further intensify the shadows. Also part of the ropes. Maybe detail them out a bit more. So I'm going to use kind of my pencil's texture in the little braided parts of the bonnet. And now we're gonna move. Let's do this top section first. Okay, so I'm going to take an H pencil and we're just going to kind of we're going to do the base form. There's not much going on per se, but we're just going to put in a very light form layer for it, and then we are going to add in the little holes, and then we are going to put in the highlights. This should take a little bit quicker. Not going to faff around too much with it. Take your blending stump and just blend that pencil in. I'm going to take my mono eraser now. We just want to do a bit of highlighting in this area first. Just a bit. I still am going to go in with a bit of a darker pencil as well, just for those deeper details. So I'm going to do things a bit backwards now. I'm going to use the mono eraser to kind of map out everything, which you can totally do as well. Also a fun way of doing things, just need to clean it really. But with a lighter layer of pencil it should be better. It's less detailed here at the top. Just continuing on. And this just gives also a very nice texture to work off of. There we go. I'm gonna take my H pencil again. If I can find out where I put it. Take another one. As you can see, the mono eraser just put in a bit of little form and texture and a little bit of function to it. So now we're just going to continue on. This is now going to be a lot lighter pressure because it's fully in the sunlight. If I want to, I can use the point to add a bit more of a darker shadow. There's all these squiggly lines in between and kind of form around the knitted pattern. And we're just gonna kind of wing it as we go along. It's basically just a bunch of markings that we are making. It will end up blending together. Still some that's more prominent down here. There we go. So you'll see there's some little ridges up top here with shading and then one dark little spot. So we're just gonna put that in. We also already basically put in some highlights, so already kind of half the work. It's sometimes a bit better to go in darker because it really gives you, well, darker in relation what else you're putting on. Obviously if you make the lightest parts darker, you need to make everything else darker. So it's a balancing act. That's why I like to kind of fill everything in to a certain degree, and then therefore you can see, oh shit, I made this too dark, or this is way too light in contrast with everything around it. It's too stark for me. Let's turn it down a bit. So it's all about finding balance. You need that balance in all the drawings, unless you're going for something completely stylized, if that's more your style. Which is, I mean, some people are really good at it. Not so much me. I mean, obviously you have a style, but completely stylized drawings are a whole different ball game. Still just using this 8-inch H pencil to work everything in. Now I'm going to take my blending stump and just kind of blend all that in. Now I'm going to go in with a 6B pencil. We're going to put in some darkness. Oi. Need to clean my sharpener first. There we go. Add in some real depth now. And this also just brings out a different dimension, makes the highlights a bit more highlighty. I'm just doing this kind of randomly, paying attention to where it goes, where the darkest parts obviously are. Because you don't want to randomly start putting darker areas in places where it shouldn't be going. I mean, that will just be counterintuitive. But it's very crucial just to get a different dimension and feel to the drawing. There we go. And just do some shading around certain little parts. There we go. Then we go up here where there's some more. I'm now using the flatter side of this pencil for the texture of it, which is very handy. Because I do like the texture that a B pencil gives. It kind of makes this grainy texture. And it's kind of grainy, since I assume it's kind of a knitted type woolly fabric. Don't know. Never used an Ebony on a horse before. Always seen it. Never had any need for it, let's so say. There we go. A little bit more down here on the edge, and also some more down here at the bottom. Now we're just going to put in some of the darker little holes. So if you notice, they kind of move in a line. So just be mindful of that when you do put them in. Notice the pattern. But obviously they're not square or circles, or they kind of form to whatever is going on around it. Just try to be random with your strokes and your when you lay down the pencil, because it will help with the overall feel of it later. Especially you want this to be readable from a distance, because not everyone that's going to view your drawing is going to be standing right up front with it, with their nose to it. Majority of the time it will be viewed in passing, or when you're sitting down or standing a distance from it. You still want it to be readable at that point, so that you can discern from what is going on. Obviously the size of the drawing will determine how far it can be viewed, and still be viewed in a manner that you intended it to be viewed. Obviously in this type of drawing, the farther you are, the more the details will anyways get lost, because it is a smaller drawing. But with the larger drawings you can stand further away and you still want those details to be visible and still portray whatever markings you made to still be what they are, what you intended them to be. And you have to keep that in mind. I mean, these little details we're putting in will anyways kind of disappear, but it should still be discernible as a ear veil with leather tack from a distance. You just won't be able to see all the details. If you want your drawings to be more obscure, that's completely more, I think, stylized, or depending on what you're going for. But artists also do that, so it completely intends what your intention is when the viewer views, obviously, the artwork. What you want them to see, what you don't want them to see. Are there little gems close? Obviously when they get closer to the drawing, they'll start seeing things that wasn't there before. And it's like these little hidden Easter eggs. Just taking my blending stump and just blending in, being a bit random about it, and then I'm going to take my eraser and complete all the steps, and just put in some highlights and markings. Be very loose and random, as random as you can be about it. Obviously a dirty eraser will not take as much pencil out, which I don't mind, because it is more in the shadowed areas. Doesn't necessarily have to be that light. There we go. And now we're going to start with this bottom piece, and then we're going to do the overall finishing up details. So I'm going to take my blending stump, just put down a base layer. Obviously this pattern is going to be completely different to the one we just did. Take my 2B pencil, I'm just gonna kind of form it out first. So obviously the sun is hitting this part and then the rest is shadowed. So we're just going to quickly do that before we put in any form of detail. And we're also going to blend this out. There we go. Just going to clean up here quickly underneath. I'm going to take my 2B. So it's more of a scalloped pattern down here. So quickly, it kind of moves in little layers. So I'm quickly gonna put in some little scalloped patterns down here. Obviously these have to be dark in line with the shadow that is being cast from the tack. So I'm just going to continue on. So the shape does change a bit for some of the scallops, so we're just gonna keep that in mind, but still keeping it very loose. Kind of fades here because it moves away from the view. Did some markings here, so we just put that in. It's almost like little half discs, so we kind of allude to little disc patterns for some of them, not all. Still keeping to the scallop form. So we're gonna do this bottom edge. It's more of a braid. So we're gonna quickly just I will at some point do a braided mane, and we'll do plaits as well, which are braided, so a forelock, and then also the little buttons. That is also on my agenda. I'm still looking for a photographer, maybe one day if we have a show at our stables. I'll take a little reference maybe of someone who's got some nice braids. The first one will probably be that of a bear, which has a black mane, which would be a lot easier to see all the forms and the highlights and everything, especially if it's sunny. And then we can go on to something that has a lighter, maybe a flaxen mane or a graze mane. And then also you get your Spanish braids. on the horses. And then tail braids also, we still have to do a dedicated mane and tail tutorial. So there's still lots to do, lots to show, lots to go through. Various forms of tails. You can do dog's tails, fluffy tails, spaniel ears. I mean, lots to do. Noses, whiskers. I'm still just using my 2H and still just looking at the little dark spots, just making marks for them. Not really giving them too much form just yet, just mapping them out. Okay, now I'm gonna take my edge pencil again. Now I'm going to try and add a bit more detail to it. So the majority of the shadow lies on the left side of the pattern, as it did on the top. Using quite a fair bit of pressure to lay down the pencil to make it darker, especially in the mole where we've already suggested there will be a darker tone or value there. But once we use a B pencil, then so these are like little dots in between the braided edge. And at the top here as well, where the scallop kind of continues but breaks up in view. Just going to take my blending stump again, and we kind of use it, which is also a method you can use. I think it will be more effective with larger areas, which I did with my A3 version of the Bonet. I took a blending stump with graphite powder and used that to map out my forms and my shapes and my little holes. That's also a very good way just to get a base down. And you can also shade with it, put form to the material, and that works quite well. But I think that works better if you've got a larger surface area to cover. It's very quick. It gives you a nice base to work off of. This is too small for that, but that's also a very nice technique. That's the technique I used when I did my A3 version of it. This is an HB pencil, by the way, and I much prefer that method to get down forms quickly. It's just more efficient in the end. I quite like that method, to be honest with you. Using graphite powder to lay down any base or form is very useful to have, because you're not actually putting pencil down, you're not putting marks down, you're just putting a wash of values and tones, and a good way to mark out where what's going. And you should have noticed by now with the few tutorials I did, I quite like putting base down. But definitely for any form of material, I would say putting a layer of graphite powder and mapping out all your shadows and folds and everything is probably your best option, because it already starts with a softer feel, a softer look. It gives you a base to work off of. You can start putting in your details a lot quicker. Especially if you don't want to faff around too much with a certain part of a drawing, which for areas that I know it's going to be a bit of a difficult task, I want to make my journey through it a lot quicker and a lot easier for myself. So I will start with something that will enable me to get things down a lot quicker, get the details in, get out, you know, that type of thing. And then once the drawing is all completed, I can go back in over the top, and I'll be a lot more confident because I've already got a good base down. And it will just feel a lot easier and not as daunting of a task when you've got this very detailed piece that's kind of, you don't know what to do with it, and you're like, oh, how am I going to approach it? Just use graphite powder. Just use it. Use a blending stump. Just go for it. I mean, if you mess up, it's very easy to get rid of. A lot easier than pencil. So you can really play around with it. So I'm just using my mono eraser, and we can put in some highlights. I'm going to go in with a dark pencil just now to reinforce all the folds. But yeah, I mean, I only recently started using graphite powder, about maybe 2-3 years ago, and it's really changed the way I draw. Extremely useful, and it just adds very nice depth and color, not color, but just overall softer feel to certain areas that you can't actually achieve. This is a 6B with certain pencils. Just gives you something, an extra dimension to your drawings that you probably won't have. I'm just going to darken this up with the 6B as well. Blend this in. Soft pressure, just going to use the texture on the pencil itself like we did at the top. Yeah, I'm also just going to add a bit of depth and shadow. I'll go in with a mono eraser again just to reinforce some of the highlights that was now lost in these areas. take my blending stump and just gonna add some blends. I'm on a eraser. There you go. So I'm going to take my 6B. We are now going to start going around the drawing. If I can find it where I put it. There we go. We're going to start kind of deepening up shadows. Putting in final little last details. I like doing this with a B pencil because if you use the softest bit of pressure you can achieve the look you want. So I'm just going to take a 4 edge for this top one here. I'm just going to fill it in because I don't like leaving things white. I'm going to do exactly the same for this. I'm going to kind of work off of, there you go, blend it in. So focus most of the shadows down here at the bottom. There is a shadow down here at the bottom, and then I'm just going to take my mono eraser and just put in my highlights here at the top, or more to the middle as well. There we go. And that should just this is still my 4H pencil. Now I still need to put in some stitching. And I'm gonna do that most likely with a jelly roll. This 6B pencil. To edge there we go. Still using my 2 edge. So I'm just going in to further reinforce details, or just maybe darken up some areas. add in some pencil where I didn't put any pencil. Not going to play around too much with the darkness of this leather or with the ebony, since I'm quite pleased with how it looks and with the feel of it. Just going over lightly to maybe get a bit of texture. There we go. Now I'm going to take my jelly roll. Now I just need to put the stitching on the right place. This is a B pencil. Just going around the stitching. Not being very precise about it. Going to take a blending stump and we're going to go over it, over the jelly roll. There we go. Putty Eraser. Further enhance some highlights. Putting in some there. Putting in some there. Some right here at the point. There. One there. Putty Eraser just helps a bit with all the little finer details. There we go. Let's sign it. So that was just a basic tutorial, basic techniques, getting the feel of something quickly, putting it on, getting in, getting out. I think the less you think about whatever you're drawing, and just go and do it and draw what you see. Not think about, oh shit, this is a knitted pattern, this is this pattern, this is long fur, this is mane with stuff in it. You just go for it. You start putting down pencil, getting stuck into it. You need to get in a mindset of getting in, not thinking too much about it. You've got to fall back on the stuff you've learned, the stuff you know, stuff you've drawn before. You know, you've got a bit of a repertoire fallback technique, fallback to go off of. And these things always tend to relate. They kind of intermingle. Certain techniques, certain textures can help maybe with something you thought it would never be able to help with. So this is very get in, get out, just put it down, don't think too much about it. I really hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. It was a quick one. Well, as quick as you can draw stuff. But yeah, and then I'll see you for the next one.